Oh, we started the broadcast. Are you seeing it?
Oh, I'll start it.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody. Hope you've all had a chance to fill in the poll that we had in the beginning of the webinar. We'll be sharing that at the end of the presentation. So I'd like to just welcome everyone to today's webinar, Planning, Budgeting, and Forecasting. My name is Kathleen Wong, and I'm from TGO Consulting. Here with me today is Alan Whitehouse, who is a Chief Software Architect from TrueSky. So just before we get into the presentations, all the phones are going to be on mute as to eliminate any background noise. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type it into the GoToMeeting interface, which is going to be on the side of your screen, and we'll be sure to get to the questions at the end of the presentation. Also, when you leave, there will be a questionnaire that pops up. Please take the time to fill it in, as your feedback helps us improve all our future presentations. So we're going to start off with an overview of TGO, then go into who TrueSky is, and then go over a demo, and then go into your questions. So for those of you who don't know TGO, for the past 26 years, we have specialized in ERP, business intelligence, business process management, and corporate performance management, specifically with TrueSky planning, budgeting, and forecasting. So, without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Alan.
Muted.
Thank you, Kathleen. A little bit, just talk about TrueSky Company, a couple overview slides. I'm not going to show you guys to death, and we'll kind of take it from there. So TGO is a software development company. We were founded with the goal of providing a user-friendly and finance-maintainable planning tool. This has all been based on over 25 years of experience as a company and working with deploying financial-related applications for organizations of all size. And on the staff, we are comprised of both software developers who write code, as well as finance and business experts that have that business background that can relate what businesses need in real life to what developers can code in the background. So what is TrueSky? TrueSky is a corporate performance management solution. And what that allows you to do is to start with the planning process. And by planning, that's the same as saying budgeting, forecasting, whatever term you want to use, but it's somehow getting your numbers into the system. Once your numbers are in the system, we have tools that allow you to monitor those numbers, compare those plans to your actuals, so pulling data from, say, your ERP into what have you, and to compare how you're doing it. If you see that you have numbers that are too high, numbers that are too low, tools that allow you to analyze and drill down and to see what else is going on in the situation, and then report that information back to the stakeholders, who can then replan, and again, that cycle starts over and over again. So let's talk a little bit about what we see as a typical yearly budgeting cycle. And I think at the start of this presentation, we got a poll out and asked who was using Excel for budgeting. And I think almost all of you, or pretty close to all of you, were using Excel for budgeting. So what I'm going to show you should make a lot of sense here and should resonate well. So let's look kind of the typical, if you're doing a once-a-year budget cycle, like many of you are. Odds are if you're using Excel and you've got any number of users, you're probably starting about a 4-month cycle, 120 days out, and that's kind of what the timeline in the middle shows you about. And what you see up at the top here is probably what's very traditional in terms of how you spend your time during that budgeting cycle. So you spend a great deal of time creating your input templates. I mean, you're probably creating one workbook per user, or one per department, one per location, per business unit, depending on what your slicers and dicers are in your organization. And that's because you're populating each one with actuals that you're copying and pasting from your ERP system, that each one is unique to the individual because of security concerns and so forth. So you spend quite a bit of time creating and maintaining templates, and that's a process that you have to do over and over again each budget cycle. And then we get to send it to the end users to actually do budget input. And this takes a while for a couple reasons. One, people that actually are responsible for entering numbers into the system, very few actually really enjoy the budgeting process. It's tedious. It takes away time from their day-to-day activities, and no one really likes to do it. So it always gets dragged out for that reason. But also because the tools that you provided to them and the Excel spreadsheets are not the best way to get data into a system and to collect that number, so things just tend to take a while. Well, once they get the numbers inputted and you get them back to you, you have to review them for correctness, making sure that your numbers seem correct, that no one's put in $1 million when they meant to put in 100,000, and so forth. And then after that, you go through that painful, painful process of trying to merge all of those workbooks back into one single comprehensive budget. And that's where you find out that people have added a row, deleted a column, changed a formula, and that just becomes an exponentially more difficult situation to deal with. After you do the merge, you have to do a second review just to make sure, again, that the merge was correct and all your numbers look right. So now you're into the last few weeks of the budget cycle, and this is really where the high-value stuff and why you do the budget to begin with. You're modifying some of those numbers and you're presenting it to your board of directors, your management, your ownership, your bank, whatever the case may be. And then they give you some feedback and then you modify those and you finalize those. And those are all done in the last couple weeks of the budget cycle. Yet those are the high value items and they get the least amount of time spent on them. Well, what we like to try to help you with is through the use of our tool and the deployment and so forth is a budget cycle that looks a little bit like what you see below. First of all, the creation process becomes far less because a single template can be used in multiple ways across multiple users and automatically have things like security invoked. You're not having to maintain and create as near as many templates as you used to. In fact, I've had clients that have deployed literally had hundreds of templates to begin with and bring it down to half a dozen at the end of the day when it's all said and done. Input. Now, we can never make users decide that they really love the budgeting process and want to make budgeting their priority and work on it, full speed and on the weekends and evenings. But we do have ways that help get them into get their numbers into the system quicker with less effort that help speed up that input process. Again, you always want to do some level of review, making sure that the numbers are approved and people aren't trying to put in budgets that are 10 times what they spent last year and so forth. But we take away that whole big process of the merge. And because we've saved you so much time up to this point, we like to think we give you a lot more time to do whatever you want with, right? You can spend it golfing, you can spend it, leaving, work early, or you can spend it doing analysis and strategizing about what to do. So in many organizations we work with before they deploy True Sky, we find out that it's only after the budget is finalized where they sit down as a team and strategize and say, hey, if these numbers are true, what does this mean to the business? Do we have to hire more people? Do we have to let people go? Should we be renegotiating contracts with vendors? Should we be getting more warehouse space? That happens after the budget is finalized. We think that should be happening before your budget is finalized. And because we save you so much time, we give you that time up front. That lets you modify your numbers and ideally do one presentation to your board where you've thought of all the what-ifs, you've thought of all the questions, and you go forward from there. Well, so how do we do that? Well, part of that is through our powerful end-user interface. One of the things that we'd like to point out is that our interface leverages and works within Excel, and that gives you all the native Excel functionality that you can ever hope to work with. You will see many other solutions on the marketplace that tout their data grid, and they say, and you'll see it in quotations, their Excel-like interface. Well, we decided to bypass the whole Excel-like and decide, you know what, we're going to stick with Excel because we truly believe that from an end-user point of view, Excel is the best tool that you can use for budgeting. Most people that are in some way, shape, or form involved in a budgeting cycle at some point in their life have used Excel for budgeting, so it's very comfortable, it's very familiar. It's also very powerful. Microsoft has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on R&D and development of Excel over the last 20 years. So again, we are full Excel, and you can leverage all of that great stuff when you're rolling out templates. Because it is Excel, we also find that end-user training is minimal. Because they use Excel, all you really have to do is teach them the little bit of the delta on what's the difference between Excel and then True Sky within Excel. And for many of our clients, they do that simply by recording a series of 5 or 10-minute web videos, post them up on their intranet site, and that really becomes training for the end users. However, we do realize that budgeting is something people don't do every day. So we have provided specially designed budgeting tools for users that help get them through that process a little bit quicker, trying to make sure that they can do whatever they need to do whenever they need to do it. All right. However, we are not just Excel and the wild, wild west. So we give you centralized control. So we have a centralized administration console that's web-based, designed from the ground up to be maintained by the finance group. So once TrueSky is installed and configured, which does require IT assistance, the goal is that the finance group should be able to maintain everything else from that point by themselves. We store data centrally, so you don't have to worry about losing templates, backup restores, so on and so forth. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of the slideshow and go into the demonstration of TrueSky. So I'm going to go over to another image I have here. And right now everyone on their screen should be seeing an Excel workbook. And you should see up here in the ribbon bar the familiar things that you're working with, whether you be in Excel 2007 or 2010 or 2013, with home, insert, page layout, and so forth. And then we have this little tab here which is called TrueSky. From an end user point of view, this is where the end user works with TrueSky. They don't have to know multiple interfaces. They don't have to go different places to work. Everything's within the Excel interface. I'll go through most of these functions as we go through the presentation, but I'm going to start with a couple things here in reports and assignments. Like I said, we're more than just a data capture, a budgeting capture tool. We are also a reporting tool. You have the ability, and I'll show you some at the end, we have the ability to also publish reports out to end users, and reports are read-only documents that they cannot change. And reports can take one of two flavors. They can be static, meaning I can publish a report to users, and that data is fixed. It doesn't change over time. It is what it is, and that's good for a certain type of reporting. Maybe you have people that don't understand accounting, don't understand that on the last day of the month those numbers aren't quite final yet, and you want to wait, to publish those numbers. We also have a second type of report that you can publish, which is a dynamic report, and those are fully interactive, up to the minute, allow full slice and dice, and everything else that you would want with a report. So we offer two different flavors there, depending on what you need for your situation. Assignments are where users go to enter data into the system. So I'm going to click on the assignment button here and open up my assignment pane. Now the first thing you're going to see here is this list of assignments is unique to me as an individual. So depending on what assignments have been generated by an administrator, depending on my security settings and a couple of other factors, somebody may open this list and see one item, somebody else might open this list and see 10 items. Okay? I can click on any of these items and get a little bit more information. So I'll click on overhead right here. And you can see, I need to submit my numbers by next Friday. This is my due date, so I'm actually very behind on getting my numbers. And then down below you see that we have the assignment status. So behind the scenes we have, if you choose to use it, a full workflow process where your numbers can go through an approval process, where you get to create your own approval tree that determines, okay, these people report up to these people, report up to these people, or these numbers report up to these other individuals, and so forth. And it can be a very robust matrix as well. It's not just that traditional 8 people report to 4 people, report to 2 people, report to 1 people. We support dotted line kind of extensions, or the situation where I'm responsible for doing data entry for Department A and Department B, and Department A goes to one person for approval, and Department B goes to a totally different member for approval. Well, I'm going to click on overheads, and I'm going to open up my assignment. So what the system's done is it's gone out of the system and it's pulled back my empty template at this point. And if you've ever worked with Excel and pivot tables, we're very much similar to that, where we have data populating on rows, data populating in columns, and then we have our filters over here. So these are my slicers for what I want to work with during this presentation. And each of these slicers, whether it be department location and so forth, these are unique to your deployment and what your setup is. So this is, again, my generic setup, just like everything you're going to see here, whether it be the formulas, the layouts, the colors. These are all just one example, and you can deploy them just like Excel any way that you like within your organization. So first thing on my filter, I'm going to show you the department here, right? Again, based on me as an individual and my security rights, what appears in this list can be unique to me. So I am seeing, because I'm an administrator, I'm seeing all the departments, but somebody else may log in and they only get to work with the finance department, and somebody else might get sales and service as they can work with. So again, security is unique on the filter level as well. When I'm picking departments, what's great is I can do a single select, or maybe I want to do a multi-select. Very useful reporting where I want to be able to report individually on the admin department, report individually on the finance department, but then click on both to see an immediate roll-up of admin plus finance without having to create 2 separate reports. We also let you view your data in a tree or a hierarchical view, depending on the term that you want, on the term that you would like to use, meaning that I can do data entry for Hamilton, I can then do data entry for Toronto, see each of these individually, but click on Ontario and immediately see a roll-up of Ontario with my data. We support unlimited or multi-currency. So if you have different locations, different departments, what have you, that are budgeting in different currencies, we allow you to do that, set up an exchange rate table, and we can do conversion on that. So then you can bring it all back together into your main reporting currency. We also support unlimited versioning. So you can do version 1 of the budget, version 2, version 1000, best case, worst case. This gives you the ability to roll out collect data from your individuals as version 1, go through, review it, make a copy of it to version 2 and push version 2 back out to make changes to, while you can compare version 1 to version 2, or maybe a mid-year correction or what have you. So those are the filters that I've selected. I'm going to go ahead and retrieve my data. So now it's gone out to the database and it's pulled back my numbers for the year. And I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit in Excel here. Now again, what I'm seeing here on my rows and my columns, first of all, is unique to me as an individual, again, based on security. And all of these things, colors and shading is all how you want it to appear as a company. Now, because we're presenting, and usually over the web stuff I run out of real estate, I'm only bringing back 3 months at a time here. Your time horizons can be any time horizon you want. So if you want to budget for a full year, that's great. If you want to budget by month, that's great. If you want to budget, 5 years by month, that's great. If you want to budget by week, by day, any time horizon, any length of time, any, time increment, as well as time horizon is supported within our application. It's really up for how you want to do it. So here's my budget input. And the first thing you see is over here I have these cells that are kind of a brownish red color. If I try to delete one of those, I'm going to get an error message, a warning message. And what this is letting me know, this is locked down. So remember I was saying we have that centralized control. So in your templates, you decide where you're going to allow people to enter data. And in that example, it's only in these pinkish cells that I allow for data entry. So as a user, I can come over here and do my entry. Again, I have got all my functionality of Excel, so I can do a copy, paste. I can do the click and drag down. I can even do formulas like this. Again, this is one of the reasons why our solution to roll out to end users is very painless, because it's utilizing all of that functionality that they've used throughout the years within Excel. Nothing's different from that point of view. So I get my numbers in of 10 in, and I want to save them. All I have to do here is hit the Save button. And right now my numbers are saved back to the central database. So the great thing about this is your numbers are in a central location on one of your servers. We know they're getting backed up. You don't have to worry about numbers floating around in a spreadsheet. You don't have to worry about the actual spreadsheet getting corrupted. Everything is available. And then anyone else who wants to review these numbers in real time can see the numbers. So this gives you the ability to work really on your budgets in a collaborative point of view, where people that are approving it can work with the frontline data entry contributors in conjunction and see how the numbers are shaping up, rather than waiting for all the numbers to be done and then getting this big surprise when it starts to go through the approval process. Well, earlier on I said, we've also added some specialized tools that help people, with their budgets. So I'm going to show you a couple of those right now. So first of all, I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to go up here and show you the first thing. And you see here over on the left, I've got these green checks that kind of says where I'm at as a process, and I got this red X down here. I'm going to put a really large number, if I could type, in this situation right here. You're going to see that my value went from green to red. And that's as we set up some data validation rules. Now, from a visual point of view, we're leveraging the conditional formatting function that Excel has, which is fantastic. And we've put in some rules that say if it's, if your budget this year is more than 20% over last year's actuals, you're going to get a red. If it's between 10 and 20%, you're going to get a yellow. And if it's under 10%, you're going to get a green, and you can submit. But we've taken it a step further, is that these rules are now actually back in the database. So users can always save their information, because we never wanted a situation where somebody couldn't, had to work for 8 hours on a budget and it still didn't balance at the end of the day, and they had to leave at the end of the day and they couldn't save. So you can always save. But when you go for approval, you can take this, leveraging these conditional formatting rules, and put in either a hard stop or a soft stop on the approval process. So an example of the soft stop would be they're a little bit over the guidance that you've provided to them as an end user, but you still want to let them submit for approval. And in that case, what we'll do is we'll pop up a warning message that says, hey, you're outside of the prescribed guidance for the approval process, but we're still going to let you submit anyhow, but you might get rejected. Okay? You can also set up other rules that say, hey, you're so far out of bounds, whether you're too high or too low, that we're not even going to let you submit for approval because we know it's going to get rejected anyhow and you're just wasting everybody's time. So we offer that kind of thing. Now those rules require no programming, no developer speak to set up. Really it's the kind of thing that anyone that's really experienced with Excel that understands maybe the concept of an if statement in Excel can do. So the traditional Excel power user can set those up. Now there's some other tools that we put in here again to help get people through the process quicker, and one of those I'm going to click on here, which is called Data Tools. So what Data Tools allows us to do is to just help those users get information in a little bit quicker. So one of the things that happens a lot in the budgeting process is, and whether it's good or bad is up for debate, is that people get a number that they want to think that they're going to spend for the year. And they put that in, and then manually they have to go cell by cell and divide by 12 to get those numbers in. And we help speed that up if that's the way you want to go. So let's say I've highlighted these 3 cells here, and I think I want to spend $6,000 for the year. Well, I'm going to choose to spread that evenly across those cells. And when I hit spread, the system's already done the math for me, so I haven't had to go cell by cell by cell, figure out the calculation, and so forth. Now, you can create your own patterns as well. So whether it be something like a front-loaded, where it's higher the first quarter, back-loaded, it's higher the second quarter, or even maybe something like actuals, where right here it's going to look at actuals. So if you look at my actuals, where I go 1,100 to 2,400 to 540, where I kind of go medium, high, low, right over here, if I spread that way, it'll automatically take that $6,000 and allocate it based on the same percentages that you see over here. So this is actually great to kind of mirror your actuals into next year's budget, so you capture that seasonality of things that happen maybe because it's heavier in the spring and lighter in the fall, rather than that divide by 12, which we know in most cases is not reality for your revenue or your expenses. The other things we also support is the ability to do a quick change by a number or value. So let's say you submit it for approval and the person says, hey, you need to change these categories by 23.5% and decrease it by that much. Now it'd be a little bit of work for me on the top of my head to try to figure out what 23.5% decrease in some of these numbers are. But I can go ahead and highlight a series of cells, and I can go over here and I'm going to do a 23.5% decrease. And now if you see every time I hit the change, all of those cells that I highlighted are immediately going to be changed for me. So that's just one of the tools that we give to help give end users through the data entry process quicker, but also hoping as a side effect that you get more accurate and well thought out numbers to begin with. A couple other things that we've added to the system that are there for users to work with. I am a big believer in that budgeting knowledge is just as important as budgeting numbers. So budgeting the thought process behind the numbers. So how do you do that? Well, in traditional Excel, you'd probably do that, highlight the cell and do the right mouse click and add the comment, which is a great start. The problem is if you're in a pure Excel environment, as you merge those workbooks, all of those great comments are lost, and you don't know what people are thinking as it goes through the process. So we've kind of taken that concept and we've, I guess, hijacked it might be the way to call it. So I'm going to click on my cell bonus number, and we give you the ability to put in new notes online. Okay, so I save this note. It's now going to be saved in the database with my data. Anyone that's approving my numbers will be able to see my notes. 6 months from now, if I'm running a budget to actual type report, anyone else at that point will be able to see my notes. That way all that information is online in a central place. You don't have to worry about all these emails flowing back and forth. And you really know what people are thinking. You can even add attachments. So as an example, if I'm going to be really high or really low, maybe I'm going to put on a business case for why I need this money. If I'm budgeting sales, maybe I've got competitive information that I think everyone else should be able to see. And you aren't able to put numbers onto budgets. You can actually put numbers onto actuals. So again, later on, as you're pushing out financial statements or other reports that are pulling in actuals, whether it be from your ERP or your order entry or your CRM system, you'll be able to make annotations to those numbers so that everyone else will know, okay, why were these numbers so high? So maybe it's a timing difference. Or we had a strike, which is why these numbers are so low, as an example. So that's just one of the tools. Now there's another tool that we've added, and that's called Line Item Details. And I'm going to scroll here so my conference registration is at the top of the screen here to show this next feature. Many times, especially if you're doing financial budgeting, you'll tend to mirror your GL. as far as budgeting. But often cases there are certain cost categories that are only tracked at a very high level in GL. Examples of that might be trade show expenses, marketing expenses, conference registrations, telecommunications. Yet when you ask people to fill out their budgets for those values, what do they do to get those numbers? Well, odds are they have opened up their own spreadsheet on their own desktop. They've typed in the name of all the conferences they're going to or all the employees that have cell phones and what the costs are going to be. They've added it up there, and then they've copied and pasted that bottom line number into your budget template. Okay, that's great, but the problem with that is, one, you've created extra work for that person to create their own templates and everything else, but worse yet, all that great detail, that backup information, has a tendency to get lost. You know, the person that created it either forgets the spreadsheet's there, they actually delete it, they leave the company, no one else knows it's there. So you're losing all this great information. So we've given you a feature called line item details. And the great thing about this is there's nothing that has to be created by you to enable this. It's just something that we do automatically for you. So if I want to do a build-up on my conference registrations, I can click on this. It says Open Line Item Details. And you can see that I'm going to these conferences. And you can see I'm also not very ingenious when it comes to conference names. So if I wanted to do yet another conference, and it's going to be this conference over here, and it's going to be a big one, what you'll see is when I close this window, my top line number is also going to update. It asks me to save. And right there, my top line number is updated. So now you've got all that great backup information in the system. So again, 6 months from now, you're doing a budget dash when you're trying to figure out why are we too high or too low. You can open that up and do some drill downs into your data and try to see, okay, well, we didn't go to this conference, or that conference got canceled, or it was a timing, or we sent 2 people instead of 3 people. Again, without having to resort to a whole bunch of emails, without having to just guess to where your numbers came from. Okay, so that's from an end user tool. Now, what I've been showing, and again, by the way, what I forgot to mention is we have indicators for that, so you're not blind. So you know that, again, in this example here, those are cells with cell notes, and those are cells with line item details. What I have shown you is a fairly traditional layout for budgeting, okay, that everyone uses. And this is the kind of thing where you kind of see GL accounts down the side and time across the top. But I want to show you something that I think that TrueSky does a little bit unique from other applications that are out there. And so I'm going to use that by showing travel expenses as my example. So I'm going to open up travel expenses, and I'm going to pull back my first level here, which is a tab that I've called by GL account. Now this would be the traditional way that you would see a budgeting template for travel expenses go out when it was created by the finance group, because this is kind of how the finance group is going to think, because they're very GL account oriented. Down the side here I have my GL natural accounts. I haven't bothered to show the account number, but that's what they are. And up above the top I've got my time. And here I'm asking people to put in their budget numbers. Now, this is great if you're a finance person, but this is not necessarily the best way to view it or to do data entry if you are a account executive who travels the country visiting clients. Odds are when you're asked to budget your travel expenses, that person is going to think first and foremost, I have to go visit customer A, then I'm going to visit customer B, and then I'm going to visit customer C. These are where they are, and then because of that I have certain costs associated with seeing with that. So what is that person going to do when it comes time to budget? Well, it's going to be very similar to what happened earlier when I talked about with line item details, where they create their own template on their own workstation, and they copy-paste that data into the system, and you lose all that great detail. Well, we give you the ability to create input templates in a lot of different layout formats, yet the data is still stored in the same way in the core system. So this is an example here from the finance view, but let me show you the same type of view that might be created for account executives. So what this allows them to do is budget on a trip basis. So they can put in each trip that they're going to go on. In this example, we've got a couple trips going to Las Vegas, a couple trips going to Monte Carlo, a couple trips going to Reno, and those are the costs associated with them. And I can say I'm doing another trip here, and I forgot about my meals and entertainment, so I'm going to need to put some money in here. Oops, sorry, clicked in the wrong place. So that's what I'm going to spend for that as an employee. And if I needed to add another one, I could, and I can save it, and my data is saved. Now if I go back to my finance view, right there, and I refresh my data, you're going to see some numbers change there. And there's that 2,000, and I can open up my line item details and see my information there. So what that allows us to do is to create budget input templates that are tailored to the business group that has to do the data entry. And this is one of those ways, yet still serves the need of the finance group to get their financial reporting out the door. And this is one of those ways that we help speed up that whole data entry process, is let you do that. We can also do another kind of example here where I retrieve the same kind of data, where I can see in really quick view, these are all the trips and everything else. So you've got a lot of different ways that you can do entry that you can choose from when building your templates. Still gets the data back in the same way. Again, help speed up entry and still get you all the reporting that you can need. I'm going to show a couple other things, and then I'll show a little bit of admin and some wrap-up, and then open it up for questions. We've kind of talked a lot about one person doing entry, but again, we fully support the concept of multiple people doing entry into the system and what they do kind of rippling through other people. So the example I'm going to show you right here is one if you might be doing related to sales forecasting, and we have two groups involved. We have the marketing group that sets product price and kind of knows product cost, and then the sales group that's going to forecast their quantities. So right here up on the screen, in this example, we're selling bicycles, and I'm seeing some different categories of products that I've got. These are my different products that I've got down here on the side, and these are how many I think how much we think we're going to sell it for, because maybe in this example, marketing sets the sales price. And I think, you know what, not 50, I think we can get $100 for this. And again, I'm going to use some of the Excel features just to click and drag, and all my numbers will change over there. But because we're also going to have to add a little bit more to get that, we think our cost is going to go up to $35 here. Okay. And those are my numbers there, and I'm going to go ahead and save those. Now what we're also seeing here is in real time, we're calculating on our margin percentage so you can see how you stand. So now one group's done this entry into the system, and this is, say, the marketing group. So I'm going to close this window, and I'm going to open up now as a salesperson to project sales volumes. So right here what you're seeing is this is the same the products that I had before, but again in real time, those are the numbers that we put in for the sales price that the marketing did. So again, one group can be working on one section of data, another group can be working on another section of data. Talking to a client just yesterday, or a prospect yesterday, where essentially their HR department controls all the rates for when they're doing compensation budgeting and they're doing their calculation for taxes, so they know what the unemployment tax rates are and the benefit rates are and everything else. So they're going to put those in, yet they're going to be on the other templates for all the managers who are actually doing other work, and then those calculations will happen for them. So now I can put in how many I think I'm going to sell at any one price, and now I can save that number. So, and then again, well, we've got the price, and at the end of the day, we're calculating out of our revenue there. So because of that, we support this kind of multi-user environment working on the same data at the same time. In any one of these pieces of data, what's great about that is we have a whole audit history behind the scenes, so you can see all the changes that were made, who made them, when they made them, so you know as numbers change over the course of time, if a number doesn't look right, you can know who was able to change it and so forth. Okay. Now, within TrueSky, we also give you the ability to do not just financial budgeting, but again, it really is an all-encompassing budgeting and data capture tool. So you can use it for doing, like I said there, which was kind of sales revenue and sales forecasting. You can do it for travel expenses. You can do it for project budgeting. So if you've got budgets that you want to put in for projects, you can do that with the system. You can do it for traditional expense budgeting, as well as capital assets, so CapEx kind of budgeting, and compensation. All of those kind of processes are fully supported within the TrueSky environment. In addition, if you can dream it, you can build it. So if you want to use this just as a tool for doing structured data capture, you can do that as well. In fact, I've had clients where in the past they needed to capture data from the field, where what everyone was doing was filling in their own spreadsheet and copying and pasting attendance numbers and how many people donated and so forth. And then they use this kind of tool in order to capture all of that. So now I've got all my numbers in and doing all this. One of the things that's good is you can report back out, and I'll touch on that in a second, but there's a feature that we've added to TrueSky that we're really proud of that I'd like to talk about, and that's our what-if analysis. So this is an example of the screen that I brought up where you can have your different what-if scenarios. And I'm going to say I want to look at changing my final amount and seeing what an increase of 23, this magical 23.5% increase does. Now I could say, you know what, I want to apply a 23.5% increase to all of my accounts for all of my departments for all of my locations, okay? But that may not make sense, okay? More likely, what you would do is you would say, you know what, I'm not going to apply it to all of my accounts. I'm just going to look at my expense accounts, and I'm going to apply a 23.5% wage increase for just my salaried wages accounts, for just my finance and accounting department. And it's not going to be for all the locations. It's just going to be for the locations in Canada and the U.S. And it won't be for everything, but it's just going to be for 2014, and it's going to be for Q4 or Q3, basically the summer months kind of thing right there. And now I can click Save, and it'll actually go through and change those numbers for me. So the scenario where you would really use this is you get your initial budget, and you make V1. You make a copy to V2, and now you can play with those V2 numbers in that more, we talked about earlier in the slideshow with the gives you time to think and the strategy and the analysis. Now you can see what the effect of certain changes will be. So this is great for that, long-term planning. What happens if we do give a wage increase? What's the ripple effect of the bottom line? What happens if we do merge these two departments as an example? Other thing it's great for is maybe you're thinking of doing an acquisition or a divestiture. So you're looking at getting rid of a location or something like that. Traditionally, you could put that out in another template, ask people to change their numbers, but maybe you don't want all that information publicly known. So this is a great tool for that. So now that you've done your what if, you've got all your numbers in, again, remember TrueSky is more than just a budgeting tool. It's also a financial, or not even just a financial reporting tool, but really just a general reporting tool. So here's an example of one that I've done, which is just the traditional kind of budget. This could have been actuals as well, where I'm seeing my income statement and I can expand it out. I can decide what months, if I want to see details on months. You can also build things like balance sheets and cash flow statements, no problem with that. And again, any other kind of reporting tool that you want. So again, not a tool that just needs to tie to the ERP data. This could be tied to your customer relationship management system data. This could be tied to your inventory system. It could be tied to your order entry system, tied to your HR payroll system. And then here the other one I'll show you is you can also use it for dashboarding as well. So you can print out the traditional reports where you've got numbers, or you can do dashboards or combinations of charts and graphs. And again, this is one of the other reasons why we chose Excel, because Excel has this great data visualization capability within it that we're able to leverage. So here I have some different things where I'm showing gross revenue by period and so forth, but I could choose to then still slice it and dice it by department, by location, by product line, if I wanted to, depending on what the situation was that pertains to that. So again, bringing that full circle to becoming a CPM type solution, not just a budget capture solution, which is probably what you've really got when you're just using straight Excel. So I'm going to go back and show just a couple more slides here, and then we will open it up for questions here. So really at the end of the day, what we see is that by deploying TrueSky, you get the following type of benefits. First and foremost, more effective budgeting. So I think what we've shown is the ways that we can give you some greater accuracy with your numbers, especially if you're using some of the validations and so forth. Hopefully through the use of some of those tools, we've shown how you can decrease the amount of time it takes to get the budgeting process rolling and do it more often, which I am a big believer in, especially in today's business environment, of budgeting more often. Once a year is no longer cutting it. Because everything's stored centrally, you have that full visibility throughout the process. So you can see numbers as they're rolling up in real time. And I think I showed you some of the what-if capabilities that we have there. Again, we have full Excel functionality. And again, Excel has a depth of robustness in terms of features and functionalities. And we get to leverage, I won't say 100%, but I'm going to say we're close to 99% of all that functionality that's out there. We have a minimal IT footprint, as well as we require minimal end-user training. And at the end of the day, we have a low total cost of ownership. If you're interested in cost of ownership, which I think most of you are, if you go out to this little link right here at the bottom, and I think we'll probably be following up with an email as well that sends out this link for you, the attendees, it actually will help you calculate some of your potential savings, especially if you're using Excel today. So in the calculator, put in the number of users you have and kind of what's the average salary or hourly wage and what have you, and it will help you figure out and show you what your, what budgeting in Excel is really costing you, and then you can compare that to what the cost of a solution will be. So I'm going to open it up here and unlock the lines. We'll let Kathleen handle questions. What we'd like you to do, I think, is put them into the ask a question within the GoToWebinar interface, and if we need to get more information, I will unmute you. Sometimes we find if we unmute all the phones, we get too much background chatter. So with that, I'm going to bring
Unmuted
on, and we will start answering questions.
Thank you, Alan. So we first have a question from Bob. He asks, does TrueSky support any of the cost of goods forecasting based on bills of materials and input prices along with the volume forecast? Also, does the system support different sales and production volumes with appropriate inventory change impacts?
All right.
So let me.
All right.
muted.
So that's this is asked by, so I can see the name of the person asked, which is Bob. So that's a big question. I'll try to give a simple answer. The short answer is yes. Really, how I try to promote TrueSky, or how I explain it, is if you could model that kind of concept in Excel, you can do it in TrueSky, but you get all the great controls. So one, we tie in with source data. So that means we can tie in with your ERP and look at your items out there. And again, if your ERP is tracking what's in a BOM and so forth, you can look at that and look at all of the values that are there, including what do you have on hand and everything else, and use that to forecast volumes. So I think if I understand your question, the answer would be for that. Does it different sales and production volumes? Absolutely. So what you can do is, again, if we don't just tie in at a GL level. We can tie in to any data sources, including in an ERP subledger data. So whether that be inventory counts, whether that be your BOM masters where you're listing, what goes on, and then build templates such that if I say, okay, I need 8 of these, and these are all the sub-items I need, and if I predict a 50% increase in sales, when am I going to run out of inventory? Again, if you can model it in Excel, we can pretty much do it in TrueSky and give you all the controls. So I hope that answers the question. I think your question we could probably have easily have a half-hour discussion on, but at the end of the day, I believe, unless you throw a real curveball at me, it's the kind of thing that we could handle in TrueSky. So we will
Unmuted.
Another question.
Before we move on to the next question, I just wanted to remind everybody about the survey at the end of the webinar. If you could please fill that in, that'd be great, and it helps us improve any future webinars. I have another question from Aja, who asks, how many existing templates are available? From an initial setup, how long does it take to build the models for a fairly advanced XLS user? And how does TrueSky integrate with other accounting programs such as Jonas Software?
All right.
Muted.
So the first answer to that question is how many templates come with TrueSky? And the answer to that is 0. And that's a conscious decision by us because I have never worked with 2 companies that have the exact same chart of accounts, where the numbers mean the same thing, where their roll-ups and build-ups are the exact same, who want to budget the exact same way. So the number of templates that we have is 0 because of that very reason. So for that very reason, it's 0 templates. Now, to build a model from scratch, we have a tool within the admin interface that allows you to build models. And that's where you determine your slicers and dimensions. And then you can map it to existing ERP data from any of those. To build a model can be anywhere from half an hour to a day, depending on the complexity of the model and everything that you're working on. But it's the kind of thing that either we can help you with or just give you training and you can work with on your own. Let's see. How does it integrate with accounting programs? So the whole system was designed to be back-end system agnostic, meaning that we would support tying into any type of electronic data feed, whether that be directly going at, say, SQL tables from the system, or worst case, you're dumping out a CSV file. Every system is a little bit different. We've integrated to a lot of different ERP systems and other back-end systems that are out there. That is one of those areas where we traditionally come in and work with your IT group to pull the data in the correct format, and working with you to find out where things lie. And I think final of that is, yes, I think I hope they answered the questions on that one for Aja. I hope I pronounced that correctly. All right.
Next
Unmuted.
question.
And we have another question from Ronald who asks, can I build my own custom templates and is there training?
Muted.
Yes, you can build your own custom templates. So templates are, and the skill set for building a template is a person that is a traditional Power Excel user. So the people that would build templates do not need to know code. They're not developers. On the flip side, they're also not people that are scared of Excel. So it's probably most likely the people that have built your current Excel workbook templates for budgeting. It's those people that, again, know some of the more advanced features and functions, how to do formulas, linking of formulas across worksheets, and so forth. You can build them to your heart's content. In real-life deployments, we've had templates that, you knock out in 15 minutes because it's very, very simple. We've had templates that take a day or two because they're that complex. So it really depends on the business process and what all you're trying to accomplish. But again, it is the kind of thing that you can take ownership of. And again, obviously there is full training as part of a project deployment for TrueSky. I hope that answers.
Unmuted.
So I have another question from Yassine who asks, is it necessary to be an expert in Excel to use TrueSky? And also, marketing people are not familiar with accounting, so do they need to have a little bit of knowledge of accounting to use TrueSky?
Okay.
Muted.
So I think it all depends on when you say, so first of all, it depends on the user to use TrueSky. So if you're talking about an end user who is the one that's putting in numbers into a template that's been provided to them, then their knowledge of Excel needs to be very minimal, right? It's how do I launch Excel? How do I know some of the ribbon bar stuff? How do I type in numbers? How do I maybe do a copy paste? So at that point of view, it's very, very minimal Excel knowledge. And it'd be the same thing if you're deploying another solution that has an Excel-like interface or a data grid or whatever. They need to have that basic knowledge, but not much more than that. And that would be whether it be a marketing person or any other one. The people that build those templates to deploy out, they don't need to be a master's level in Excel, but again, they need to have a little bit more skill than the average person in Excel. That helps, and that's part of the training that we can also provide.
Unmuted.
Those questions
I
there.
have another question from Aja. Can you tell us how much the subscription costs are?
Muted.
So subscription costs. So we offer a couple different deployment models of TrueSky. And I'm going to separate out deployment models and licensing acquisition models. Deployment models, we support an on-premise as well as a cloud-based deployment depending on your situation and what you're comfortable with. For license acquisition, there is a license purchase, and then there is also a subscription cost purchase. Now, I get my hand slapped every time I talk about costs. So at the end of this, when you fill out, and I'm not trying to be evasive, but I get in trouble when I do it because I inevitably forget to say something. Request that you want to get a little bit more pricing on subscription pricing and the little poll that closes at the end of the day. And then somebody who actually knows all the pricing stuff inside and out will get back in touch with you and give you the numbers that you need. It kind of depends on how you're deploying it, number of users. There's a couple different variables that come into play there. So I'm sorry I can't give you a more exact answer, but that's the best, my best use of
Unmuted.
right there.
Okay, we have another question from Ronald who asks, what is a typical length of training?
All right.
Typical
Muted.
training, kind of like answering how long is a piece of rope, because it kind of depends by organization. Traditionally, and I'll say kind of as an average company deploying things, as far as training goes, talk about first end users that actually doing the data input. Their training is minimal. We're talking maybe half an hour on using the system. A lot of organizations go with less because they do those web videos that roll out things that are specific to them. Okay. For administrators that are actually generating assignments, controlling security, all of that, that training tends to be about a day. Okay. The biggest training is for those people that are going to be building templates. That training is anywhere between 2 days to 5 days, depending on how many people we want to do at a time, complexity of the organization, how comfortable they are with Excel. It kind of varies. There's not one set number of days. It does get tailored to the individual, but again, somewhere between 2 and 5 days, just depending on all the particulars to your organization. So I hope that kind of answers that.
Unmuted.
Follow up if it doesn't.
We have a question from Carrie who asks, does TrueSky support consolidation?
Muted.
So, consolidation. So, we do support, and I guess it depends on, let me make sure, because we've got to be clear on what people mean by consolidations, because there's a couple different levels of when you're talking about it. So certainly we consolidate any two data sets that you want to pull together. So if I want to say Department A and Department B and roll those up together, automatic function. If you're talking about full-blown consolidation, where you're talking about doing elimination entries, and being able to have like that elimination company and pull it up with that and say what accounts don't come up in the mix, it can be done. It's not something that is an out-of-the-box type of functionality. It does require building some specific type of templates in order to be able to do some entries for your reversing, or not for your reversing, but for your elimination entries and so forth. But yes, it can be done with consolidations. We don't push it out there as a, this is just your #1 consolidation tool, but you can build reports that consolidate along with building some input templates so you can take advantage of doing your elimination entries and so forth. So Carrie, I hope that answers your question for you.
Unmuted.
We have another question. I don't know if we're going to have enough time to go through it, but this person asks, can you walk through the project's assignments quickly, and could you show how the forecasting tool works once we are in the financial year?
So one more time?
Can you walk through the project assignments quickly, and can you show how the forecasting tool works once we are in the financial year?
Okay, so
I think we are,
let's see.
how we're
Muted.
I got to see if we have the project one here. I don't know how quickly I can walk through it. Let me see here. And this is just one layout for projects. Again, it really depends on what you need to do as your organization. So right now I'm putting in one here, and I hope everyone can see this. Do I still have it shared? Okay, yes. So here's an example here. And again, just as one potential layout. Here, I'm showing last year's actuals on top, and then I've got this year's budget, so I've got my cost categories, and I get to choose a particular project that I'm working on, whether it be an internal project or an external project. And again, it's giving me those costs here, and then I can look at things like profitability and variances. Again, this is just one layout. Some people want more of a side-by-side. Some people are getting down to not like the cost category at GL level, but are more doing at a resource type level. So maybe you've got your employees in here, or your project managers, or maybe it's just task level. So this is one level for the project stuff that we can go with. The other question was related to that was, let me find out. Got to unmute Kathleen here because we're getting a little far.
Unmuted.
It was
with forecasting?
Yeah. Can you show how the forecasting tool works once we're in the financial year?
Okay.
So
Muted.
I don't have one to show that, but again, forecast, in my view, right, whether it be a budget or a forecast, it's all the same. It's different flavors of the same thing. Your time horizon might be a little bit different. The accounts that you're budgeting to might be a little bit different. So again, a forecast is just usually what most of my clients do, and again, this is not the only way to do it, right? They're going to do their big budget once a year, then their forecast, they might go out and they are only budgeting at a quarterly level or maybe a yearly level rather than a monthly level. And for that category, they're also budgeting at high-level cost categories versus the others. So those are versus more GL levels. So those are all things that can be accomplished with TrueSky. I just don't have an example of that one ready to show in this environment that I've got set up for this presentation. So let's see, next question.
Unmuted.
We have one more question. Can you elaborate on data security?
Muted.
All right, data security. So what you do for individuals is security is set up by individual. And the reason it's by individual is, in our experience of doing this over the years, people have asked, well, why don't you do it based on roles or whatever? And what we found out is that you may have 100 people in your budgeting process, and that ends up being with 90 roles. So you're almost at the point of having one role per user anyhow. So user by user, you get to determine for each of your dimensions. So a dimension might be something like department, natural account, location, time, scenario, which is budget versus actual, and so forth. You get to determine which individual items they get to see or not see. Okay? You do that in the administration console once. When it comes time to generate, and you can have different security settings, different groups of security. So for instance, these users, when they're working with compensation, they get to see these accounts. This user is when they're working with CapEx or financial numbers, they get to see these accounts, as an example. You do that once in the admin, and then TrueSky takes it from there where you generate. So whenever they open up a document, whenever they open up on a report or assignment, we automatically take those security settings and deal with it for you, so you don't have to worry about it from that point on. Again, it is an interface that's designed for the finance group to use, not necessarily, it doesn't have to be anything IT related to do it, and you can run with it from there. So I hope that answers your question.
Unmuted.
So I think we have time for one more question, and this is just a follow-up question about forecasting. What type of forecasting is there? Rolling forecasting?
No.
Okay, so
the answer for
Muted.
that is really any kind of forecasting you want, right? So if you want to do rolling forecast, you can certainly build a structure around doing rolling forecast, and that's one of the things that I actually like to encourage more and more companies to get to. Is not necessarily maybe doing one really big budget throughout the year, but then going back and starting to do rolling forecasts and updating on an as-needed and updating on a regular basis, just because I think business is changing too quickly nowadays. But again, any forecasting you can, with TrueSky, you can go out any length of time into the future. So whether it be I want to go out 12 months or I want to go out 120 months, whether I want to budget by month, whether I want to budget by week, whether I want to budget by day, by quarter, by year, all of those are supported. There's not one right answer to how to do it. It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish as an organization. Okay? Hope that answers that question.
Unmuted.
That's all the questions that we have right now. So if you have any more questions, just type them into the box. But I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today and listening to our webinar. We'll be following up within the next couple days. And if you had any questions or would like any more information, please indicate that in the survey that's going to pop up as soon as you leave the webinar. And I just have one more question here. Can TrueSky users offer off-site using Mac products and also do the same work?
Muted.
All right, so we run as a COM object into as an add into Excel. Unfortunately, native Excel on the Mac, so Mac Office for Mac or whatever it's called, doesn't support the same kind of add-ins. How we accomplish that for users that are using Macintoshes is that we can set up, usually in the deployment, a hosted environment where, in effect, they log into a window that is running the Windows version of Office, and it's using a product either called Citrix or called Windows Terminal Server. And that way they can access it that way. And we have a few clients that have that environment where people are using Macs at home, or an organization where most of the people are Windows, but they have an art department or a graphics department that is using Macs because it's more in that world, and then they access it that way. So we don't offer a native Mac version. We wish we could, but that's just one of the limitations that put on us. But there are ways to get around that if you do have those people using Macs, whether it be in the office or at home. So I hope that answers that question.
Unmuted.
So we're just about to close up the webinar for today. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to put them in the survey, or you can follow up with the emails that you see on screen right now.
Muted.
And I will say to everyone, just thank you for your time. I know for many people that are in the finance role, this is a busy time of year with audits and year-end closes and everything else. So again, thank you for taking the time out.
Unmuted.
All right, so we're at our ending time, so I'm going to go ahead and end the
Muted.
GoToMeeting. And again, fill out the webinar. And again, thank you. Fill out the poll at the end. And thank you, everyone, for their time. I hope you found this worthwhile.